Welcome everyone to Day 2 of the SingularityU Australia Summit. Here to review what happened on Day 1, as well as show us why the world isn't nearly as bad as we think. Please welcome Future Crunch.
Good morning. My name's Gus.
I'm Tane.
My name's Will, and we are Future Crunch. And here's what's been happening around the globe over the last 12 months.
The United Nations is reporting that global AIDS deaths have decreased by a third since 2010, reaching their lowest level in a decade. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a new EBOLA vaccine is working miracles. Hundreds of thousands of people are now protected, including children and frontline health workers. That is a global public health breakthrough, which is going to save countless lives.
Last year, 120 million people got access to electricity. In places like Kenya and Nepal, they're outpacing even the wildest expectations of the experts. And the FAO says the number of malnourished people has fallen below 1 billion, the first time in human history. And India just built 100 million toilets, which means 500 million people don't have to defecate in the streets anymore. Turns out humanity is finally getting its shit together.
A new research report revealed that global homicide rates have decreased by 20% since the 1990s, and The Economist reported in April this year that the global suicide rate has decreased by 29% since the turn of the century.
Save the Children announced a month ago that now 94 million fewer children are forced into labor. Did you know that last year, war deaths fell to the lowest level in 5 years and deaths from terrorism halved? Naturally, front page news everywhere, right?
In Germany, more than 40% of refugees now have jobs, and in 22 OECD countries, including Australia, Germany, and the United States, unemployment levels reached their lowest rates ever in 2018. Did somebody just say, robot apocalypse?
China now has equal numbers of girls and boys in school, and the number of students that are female in universities is now more than half. That's up from a quarter in the 1970s. Indonesia has banned child marriages, and in East Africa, female genital mutilation has gone from 71% down to 8%. And 2 billion people this year in 50 countries will vote. So much for the death of democracy.
On the 29th of July this year, Ethiopia planted 350 million trees in 12 hours. That is a new world record. Delhi, which used to be the most polluted city in the world, says that air pollution has dropped by a quarter in the last 4 years. And Beijing is reporting its lowest levels of air pollutants in 35 years. And China is also reporting that deserts are shrinking by 2,400 square kilometers a year, that forests now cover 22% of land area. That's the most in half a century. In Kenya, elephant poaching rates were cut in half in 2018. In New York, staggering numbers of humpback whales are returning to the waters of the Hudson because they're cleaner. And the population of tigers in the wild in India increased by 1/3 since 2014.
Argentina created 2 massive marine reserves in the South Atlantic a few months ago. And a month ago, Canada partnered with the Inuit custodians to make their largest marine reserve ever. And in December, in Bali, the world committed $10 billion to protect 14 million square kilometers of our oceans. Turns out the tides might be turning.
Whoa, wait. Hold on a second. These stories aren't really news, are they? I mean, that story about ocean protection, that's like almost a year old. And some of the changes that we're talking about here have taken place over years and sometimes decades. That's cheating. Isn't news supposed to be new?
I don't know. The ocean story was news to me.
I mean, come on, Will, by your own admission, you're often behind the times.
Outside the times, actually.
No, seriously though, I mean, what about all the urgent stuff that's going on right now, all the bad things? Turkish, Kurdish, Syrian border, the impeachment crisis, Brexit, trade wars, Hong Kong protests, the internment camps in China, Greta, climate change, anything to do with he who shall not be named. Don't we have more important things to be worrying about?
All right, Gus has a point. I mean, let's face it, the good news stories are all a bit rainbows and unicorns.
There is a reason for that. The sting of criticism has more emotional weight than the glow of praise. If you tell someone everything is going to be great, they're not going to take you seriously. You tell them they're in immediate danger and you've got their undivided attention. I mean, after all, we've descended from a long line of scaredy cats. Now, we know you've heard about negativity bias and the availability heuristic and the amygdala hijack like 1,000 times.
But you might never have heard it like this before. Will, over to you.
Tigers and bushes and vipers that rattle, lightning and fires and war drums in battle, running and hiding and flinching from stings. These are a few of my favorite things. Neurons like Velcro for alarm bells of danger, a virus of fear, don't take sweets from a stranger. It's nice to hear victories for whales that sing. Yes, very nice. But disasters are really my favorite things. I wake up at midnight and search for my newsfeed, a plot twist in Brexit. What can it mean? The end of the world. Or was that last spring? I'm not sure I can handle my favorite things. When my phone dies, when the tweets cease, when I'm feeling profoundly uncomfortable with stillness. I simply remember my favorite things, and then I can feel real mad.
We just can't help ourselves, can we? And neither can the news. Reporters don't just give us a distorted view of the world. They give us an overwhelmingly negative one. And this is nothing new. G.K. Chesterton was writing about it a century ago. Journalism cannot announce the happiness of mankind. Busy editors can't report the permanent miracles, the disasters that don't befall us. They can only represent the unusual.
Now, we should be clear here. We are not saying that the world is a perfect place. I mean, many things are going wrong for humanity. And we're also fouling our own nest as a species. We're destroying our living planet. So we need to bear witness to those injustices and do everything in our power to right those wrongs. But if we're going to change the story of the human race in the 21st century, we have to start changing the stories that we tell ourselves. And right now, those stories are getting lost in the noise. As a kid, for example, growing up in the 1980s in South Africa, I loved reading, and so I'd read everything I could find. Back of cereal packets, street signs. When I ran out of books, I'd read my sister's Sweet Valley High novels. Yeah.
I think you wanted to be this guy from the surf club, Gus.
No, I actually wanted to be Elizabeth Wakefield.
We accept all types here.
You would be horrified at how much I know actually about the lives of Elizabeth and Jessica Wakefield. Now, the idea that our kids today wouldn't have enough to read like I did is unthinkable. So, yeah, it's great that our smartphones are NASA supercomputers, but that's also opened us up to a fire hose of information that is orders of magnitude greater than it was just a generation ago. In fact, the German sociologist Hartmut Rosa calculates that since the beginning of the 20th century, the speed of human movement has increased by a factor of 100. The speed of communications has soared by a factor of 10 million, and the speed of data transmission has skyrocketed by a factor of 10 billion.
This exponential explosion means that the nature of our relationship with information has fundamentally changed. When information is rare, its value is to influence people. When it's abundant, overwhelming, we act on less and less of it. The impact of information declines with its abundance, and therefore its value becomes what attracts our attention, what gives us pleasure. Information becomes indistinguishable from entertainment.
And so unfortunately, most of the information available to us today is cheap and low quality. It's the equivalent of corn syrup and jelly babies.
Junk info.
That's right. It's engineered to be addictive. It temporarily satisfies our urges, but it has little to no long-term nutritional value.
Yes, and as with junk food, our bodies and brains just aren't evolutionarily equipped to process it.
So what that means is that the news doesn't inform us in the world. It causes us to walk around with the wrong risk map in our heads.
Terrorism is overrated.
Chronic stress is underrated.
Political horse races and the culture wars make all of the headlines.
Fiscal irresponsibility is relegated to the bottom of the page, a tiny column on 13, page 13.
Firemen are celebrated.
Had to work out quite a bit for that one.
That's not true. Nurses aren't celebrated even though they save way more lives.
Now, fast news doesn't just warp our view of the world, it remodels the neurological infrastructure of our brains. Do any of you wonder why it's more difficult to pick up a book as you settle into bed at night? It's not because you're getting older or that your schedules are so demanding. It's because digital media has changed the physical structure of our brains.
What it means is that we've made junk information our primary food group. All of us have become the equivalent of the guy who spent a month eating only burgers and fries. So, what do? How do we fix our information diet?
Our narrative nosh.
Our story soufflé.
What would happen if we took the advice of Nicole Wong, who says that it's time for a slow food movement for the internet?
What if we changed our intake and started consuming the informational equivalent of whole grains and vegetables instead?
Well, the good news is that you don't actually have to wonder because you're already doing it. It's exactly what we're doing right here, and it's what we did yesterday. It's what this summit is all about. It is a 2-day feast of mind-blowing facts and stories about the extraordinary times that we live in, information that's useful, provides perspective, and that is beneficial for our health and our well-being. And the dietary philosophy that underpins this summit is right here in the Singularity University mission statement.
The world's greatest problems are the world's greatest opportunities. The world has all the necessary necessary ingredients to tackle our greatest challenges and create abundance for all. We have the visionaries. We have the teachers. We have the technologies, the makers, and the capital. There are millions of people across the globe working tirelessly to create positive change.
Bada boom. I think that nails it.
You see, food isn't just fuel, and knowledge isn't just data. We're aiming for cuisine here. Ultimately, we've got to get to that tipping point where the curiosity, the excitement of living in and creating this exponential abundance is simply more luscious, more irresistible than the neurochemical kick that we get every time we scratch our well-worn scarcity buttons.
That's why it's not enough just to turn off or to hack the news. It's not enough just to talk about falling unemployment, better maternal health, or the exponentially decreasing price of solar. The contours of our world are shaped not by statistics, but they're formed by stories. We do not lack the means to solve the world's biggest challenges. Our problem is our imaginations just haven't caught up with the world we inhabit.
Our stories of exponential change have to seduce our sense of wonder. And that's the real secret here. It's what all of the speakers at this summit are doing. They are crafting a narrative. They are weaving together a fireside story to change the world. And so what we thought we might do here is take the talking stick for a little bit and see if we could summarize what's been said around the fire yesterday. Will?
So here we are on day 2 of the summit Singularity. You and I are at the heart of Aussie exponentiality. We've listened to the very best of minds from many territories on all the global trends that are transforming our reality. Democratized, demonetized, and digitized economies. The promise of a future of abundant creativity. But please don't underestimate the unpredictability of underrated tech that then explodes into infinity. We've got underpants that taste our sweat to monitor vitality, and ultrasound that singles out Alzheimer's abnormalities. An implant in your buttock turns the lights on with a quick spank. But now you're so connected they can rob you via your fish tank. To design the world we want to see, our methods need validity. Deflating tech and road safety, decreasing global GDP. The nation state is out of date, we have a new identity. We're a worldwide viral blockchain-powered interwebbed constituency. Yes! So, how do we avoid the rage that bifurcates society and plot a course that shares the wealth of exonomic ecstasy? Humanovate, invest in trust, embrace accountability. Don't be a sheep. Articulate our naked vulnerability. We fear that our technology energy will terminate humanity. But we can choose to realize our deep potentiality. It's harder to be braver in the boardroom than the battlefield. But courage is courageous, so just use it and the others will.
Our challenge to you. Remember that cynicism is easy because you're never going to be disappointed. Courage is hard, as Kayla said yesterday so beautifully. It requires us to have difficult conversations and open ourselves up to the possibility of being wrong. But courage is also contagious. That's why it's part of all of our epic tales. It boosts our adaptability quotient, it redraws the boundaries of what's possible, and it reminds us that this is truly a miraculous time to be alive. Let's take a moment to appreciate it.
There are 6 people living in space right now. Cameras filming eruptions on the surface of the sun, robots landing on asteroids on the other side of the solar system. There are people printing prototypes of organs, storing entire computer operating systems inside DNA, dancing to the tune of earthquakes through their feet. Every day now, we give birth to new intelligences. We photographed the shadow of a single atom, mapped gravitational waves from the dawn of time, and the digital symphonies of 1 billion neurons inside our heads. We are augmenting bone and sinew with forged steel and electric fiber. We are fighting disease with molecular scissors. 1 million angels on the head of a pin. In the past 10 years, we discovered 6 lost civilizations and 2 new species of human.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And now we have the ability to make the seemingly magical real, to solve the problems of 1 billion people, to live in a world we designed. That's why we're all gathered here today around the flames, to craft a new story which we can all believe in. Remember that the present time is the furthest thing from banality. And yes, not all of what's happening right now is good. It is a strange, weird, and not always entirely comfortable time to be alive. The challenge to hold 2 opposing ideas in your head at once.
Fight injustice and cultivate an attitude of intelligent, courageous optimism, one that's willing to confront the cynics who tell us that the world cannot change. Focus on what's next, because they want you to look at the storm and you know you should be plotting around it towards dry land.
So hold fast, sail on, and act like you live in a time of wonder.
In a time when we can see beneath atoms and through the crust of the earth and across the methane lakes of Titan. Act like you can do magic.
Think big, and then make things better.
Thank you. We are Future Crunch.